let me just mention, please, if you just popped on, if you could just mute yourself, that would be great. You can use the chat function. We will be trying to kind of push through this so that we can address any questions you have at the end. So feel free to put any questions you have in the chat room so we can hit it at the end of the session, because there is a lot of info. We try to condense it a little bit, but it evolves every time we present it. This is what we'll be presenting tonight. We're going to go over what our fire district covers and what are the unique risks that we face within the fire district here, because even though we are within San Mateo County and next to kind of these higher population cities, we still are a very small and unique area. We're going to teach you how to stay informed about emergency notifications and anything else that pertains to preparedness. We're going to teach you how to get ready and make a plan when it comes to each of the unique threats that we face here in our area, how to engage your neighbors, because it's all about neighbors helping neighbors, and then what kind of next steps and how to get more involved. Next slide.
And the next slide, this is page, oh yes, I just got it all up on mine, yay. There you go. This one's still yours, I think. Yes.
Yep. So just so you guys are aware how our responsibilities are laid out, Woodside Fire Protection District covers 32 square miles. This is a very large area. And within those 32 square miles, we have 3 fire stations. It encompasses the town of Woodside, Portola Valley, and many unincorporated areas such as Ladera, Emerald Hills, lots of smaller areas. So with the 3 fire stations, we have 15 emergency responders on duty at a time, which serve about 25,000 people, give or take, depending on the time of day, day of the week, all of that stuff. So if you think about it, right, 3 fire stations for this huge area. If we were to have what's called a first alarm fire, so a call goes into dispatch and they say, okay, we have a fire, it's a first alarm. That would require 5 fire engines. So that's already depleted our supply. We have 3 fire engines we could deploy, but we're still going to require mutual aid from surrounding jurisdictions. And so just like with you guys, when we talk about neighbors helping neighbors, it's very similar when it comes to our government or our Woodside Fire. We have to depend on agencies that are right next to us to help us out. It's mutual aid. So it's important that that you understand that, yes, we are here to serve you and protect you, but we have a very large area. So that's why we want to empower you by teaching you the things that you can do to help us in the event of a large disaster. Also be aware too, in the event of a large disaster, if it's an earthquake, a lot of the resources that you might expect would come to you, say if it's Red Cross or whatnot, may not be allocated to us immediately. If it's a large earthquake, Red Cross is going to go to the highest population density areas immediately, and we're not a high population density. So that is why it is extremely important, not only that we prepare, but we prepare for more extended periods of time of disruption. So it all starts with you and your family with personal responsibility, and then getting your neighbors involved. And the town has responsibilities in terms of having an emergency operation plan and providing resources. And Woodside Fire has their own job as well to provide resources and responsibilities. Next slide, please.
So this is my first slide, and the technology is almost cooperating, but I don't get to smile at you today because nothing can detect a camera here. So let me just tell you what's on the slide without the smiles. It starts with being informed. SMC Alert is our best source for information in an emergency. It's where you're going to get the alerts. that first come out from our local fire district, and they are the most on-the-spot people that are going to be sending alerts in our area. So if there's need for an evacuation, if there's some other impending thing headed our way, this is the place that you're going to hear about it first. They're going to get as fine-tuned as possible. If they can say, hey, just this area, the Woodside Glens, you know, Skyline, whatever, we need you to evacuate in this direction and go to a certain place, they'll be as specific as possible. They might just be able to say, hey, all of Woodside needs to, sometime over the next hour, get out of town. And that's what we'll do at that time. Be prepared to get out of town. Now, if you haven't gotten yourself hooked up there at SMC Alert, please go there today or even right now, because you can always catch whatever you miss while you're signing up by looking for the video, which will be up in a couple of days on our YouTube channel. And I'd rather you spend that time right now getting hooked up on SMC Alert. Some of you folks that have been around for a while may have had some bad experiences. If you hooked up with SMC Alert a few years ago, you know it for being famous for sending out all sorts of alerts for someone saw a bobcat, someone saw some other predator, someone saw a coyote in their driveway, and you'd get that along with other real actual emergency warnings or warnings of interest. Nowadays, you can tune those really well. And I have not been warned of a coyote in, a year and a half, I think at least. So SMC Alert seems to be filtering really well. And I'm getting every one of the alerts that's being sent out. I verified that just recently. So I strongly recommend that. If you're within range of the Portola Valley emergency broadcast AM station, that's 1680 AM. Please check it out. See if you can reach that station. If you can, they will have very timely information in case of any sort of an emergency. They broadcast on that. They have some generally useful information running most of the time. WIA and NOAA. The WIA is the wireless emergency alert system. That's like Amber Alerts. That's a national part of the national system of alerts, as is NOAA. NOAA is the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration. Anything with a current in it, NOAA's got it. And NOAA operates frequencies in our area that are constantly broadcasting, well, actually, they're constantly broadcasting conditions at sea, but they're also constantly broadcasting any kind of alert in the area. If there's a storm warning, if there's anything going on, they'll broadcast that. And if it's an emergency alert, if you have a NOAA radio, it will sound off on that and crank up the volume and shout at you that there's an emergency alert. Every radio station that's licensed for public broadcasting is required to stop whatever they're doing and broadcast emergency alerts when they come over the national systems or local systems. But there are certain radio stations that are also required as primary radio stations to be especially hardened. So if we had a major earthquake and it knocked out most of the local AM, FM transmitters, certain of them are required to be especially hardened so that they stand a good chance of still being up after such an event. KCBS, AM, KQED, KSJO, and KZST in our area are primary radio stations, and they will probably be operating no matter what has just happened, and they'll be up. Now, your television, if you bought a smart TV over the last couple of years, and certainly if you buy one now and into the future, it will come with the capability of turning itself on full volume and blasting out an alert if such an emergency alert is broadcast. However, there is no requirement that they implement that feature now, and it has not, to my knowledge, been implemented in any device. So while your smart TV can do it, it won't right now, but be prepared for that to be turned on at some point. and your smart TV might suddenly start yelling at you in the middle of the night. Pay attention, because it's probably telling you something that's intended to save your life. Be aware that in an emergency situation, when you are most wanting to communicate with your loved ones and try to coordinate with your family and friends to see that everyone is safe, is when it's most likely that the cell system will be down. And even if it's working, the cell system was never built to handle everybody talking at once. So it's going to be swamped. And now, in order for you to get a connection from you to somebody else in the area, you actually need 2 cell connections. So your odds of being able to reach anybody nearby on the cell system right after an emergency, right after an earthquake, right after any other big event like that, are almost 0. Texts, on the other hand, are stored in a computer someplace and sent along very quickly as soon as the other person's available. Texts go through very reliably and very quickly. So just no matter how badly you want to call, text. When an emergency happens, pick up your phone, pick up whatever, and text. If your internet connection is working, send an email too. But a lot of the internet providers, a lot of the people providing those email services could be down as well. Text will go through. That's about it. So Selena, on to you, unless there are any questions at this point about
We'll save them. They can put them in the chat room. The last thing I want to add, I don't know, Chip, if you mentioned it about the AM radio, is that it is a pre-recorded message. So it's a message that's pre-recorded and it just repeats itself. So you could tune to that channel right now and you could just hear a pre-recorded message on there. So just be aware of that. Thanks, Chip. We'll go on to the next one. All right. So let's just keep it real, right, in our area here. The facts are our major threats are obviously, right, wildland fire, especially right now with fire season going on. Yeah, I've participated in a lot of events and talks about wildfire season, what we're doing to prepare as a fire district, as a town jurisdiction. I think tonight, even right now going on, the Woodside School is doing a talk with the town of Woodside about wildfire season. So yeah, wildland fire, we live in an area that is high fire danger. We're very aware of it. We, you guys, we chose to live in this beautiful area, and unfortunately, it also comes with some major risks, but there are things we can do to protect ourselves. But to be aware about these risks, I mean, in 2018, the fire, if you remember, those fires that year were so deadly and so destructive. I believe they were the deadliest and most destructive, with 1.8 million acres that were
she made the point quite well that
that were destroyed.
She talked about
and within that,
wildland fires and earthquakes.
There we go. Thanks. We had some major fatalities with some of those fires, with the Camp Fire, the Woolsey Fire, that 97 civilians were killed. And among those were 6 firefighters. So they were extremely devastating. Last year was not great either. We had the Kincaid Fire, Sonoma. What we don't realize with wildland fires is well, maybe we do, but there's another additional risk to that. And if you look at that picture down in the bottom left, it is the smoke that comes from those fires. And that poses a major threat, obviously. The air quality is extremely poor. People with respiratory issues, we don't even know the extent to which these fires have impacted our soil, the population. So it is a major danger, is considering the smoke as well. Earthquakes are another one. I think it was it last week or before there was an earthquake in Portola Valley. I mean, we live on so many fault lines here that obviously earthquakes are a danger. That's what we prepare for. And then with that, the last one that we see on there is landslides. And I don't know how many of you guys are aware of how bad landslides are and how much we're impacted by landslides. But when we had the heavy rains over a year ago that almost took out several of our main highways, with Highway 84 needing emergency construction, and 35, Highway 9, all these major thoroughfares that we all need for basically our contact with the rest of the world just get wiped out super easy. So these are the major threats that we deal with. Chip, you can move on to the next one.
Hello, I'm trying. Seriously, there we go. So, you know, just to add to that, now we know about pandemics, and it was something we weren't prepared for. And we had to do a lot of thinking real fast because the question is, okay, if an earthquake happened today, how are we going to respond to this? Shelters, the American Red Cross has had to think this through. FEMA has had to think it through. You can't pack thousands of people into a gymnasium anymore and think that you're doing a good thing for them, even though they don't have anywhere else to go. Chances are you're going to kill a lot of them. So the question is, how do you handle that? Well, they've thought a lot of those things through. They're setting up a lot of smaller isolation areas where people don't have to be face to face, and working out how to coordinate just a lot more smaller teams, those sorts of things. But we've also learned that we need to be prepared for just infectious disease events in general. And we probably should have all along been thinking about this in terms of a bad flu season. If there's an earthquake during a bad flu season and we're sending volunteers out to check on their neighbors and asking you to check on your neighbors, we want to know, we want everyone to be prepared to not get sick, basically. So we've learned things like staying isolated, wearing PPE, which is personal protective equipment, the masks and the gloves. When should you wear them? How heavy of protection do you need, and so forth? Is there treatment? Is there testing? All of those things. And you know, our entire infrastructure, our governments, our healthcare system, and so forth, is really just kind of coming up to speed on how to think about these things and be ready for the next one. Because chances are this isn't the last time we're going to have to deal with these conditions. So it's becoming part of our standard plan. And we hope that in the future, if a pandemic were to break out the day before we had an earthquake, we'd be ready to deal with it and not get sick. Things that we've learned, for instance, are that it could be long-term, it could be short-term. This one's going to be long-term, I think. I think we're going to be dealing with COVID issues for a while. I think, frankly, it's going to be at least another 6 to 18 months before there's any sort of treatment that keep you healthy other than don't get it. Staying vigilant, stay healthy is the thing. Don't let your guard down. Don't get caught up in the everybody's thinking, oh, I'm tired of being isolated. There's got to be something else we can do. They opened the restaurants. Let's all go out and actually people end up going out more often than they did before. Bad thinking. Stay isolated for a while. What's the matter? What's the matter? You can't stay at home for a couple of more weeks just so you don't die? I have no problem with the idea of staying home for a while so that 10, 20 years from now, I can hang out with my grandkids and tell them how odd the pandemic of 2020 was. Be aware that in our area, the San Mateo County Health Organization is the driving authority and the best place to get local information. They're the ones that are aggregating most aggressively and directly into the big pipeline, and they're also the ones getting the most direct support from national and international sources. The official place there is this smchealth.org site. Quite frankly, during this event, they've been caught a little flat-footed too, and sometimes the best information is hitting the smcgov.org site first before it gets published. In fact, they'll put something up on the smcgov.org site saying, and this is also available on the smchealth.org site, and it won't be there until the next day. So, if you got a question, I would say right now, start at smcgov.org and then go look at smchealth.org. And if you went out over the last few months looking for information and were frustrated by the lack of organization and the lack of completeness and so forth, that's gotten a lot better. If you were to go back to one of these sites today, I think you'd be surprised at how much better they're organizing it. They still got a lot of work to do, but it's getting a lot better. And don't let this stuff panic you, because, quite frankly, COVID-19 is probably not what's going to kill any of us. Hey, I know it's not what's going to kill me. I had a dream about what's going to kill me, and it was really stupid. It was stepping in front of a bus. So
the only thing I want to add to this is with the pandemic going on and all of the counties opening up, the idea, the message that we want to share is that we're not opening up because everything's okay and we can go back to normal. It's just that we are now giving you the responsibility to be personally, to take it into consideration for yourself, to go, hey, it's still not safe out there. I'm not going to go out to this area where I'm exposed to people. We're putting the liability on yourself, not liability, but we want you to be personally responsible. So the county as a whole wants to give you the freedoms, right? But it also wants you to still be aware we are still in a pandemic, which means that we still need to isolate as much as possible. We still need to wear our masks, and we still need to wash our hands and use hand sanitizer as much as possible. Thanks, Chip.
Yeah, no, I would just add to that, just to be aware that yes, when they relax constraints on us and say, okay, you can go back out, not only does that not mean that it's been beat, they know that more people are going to get sick. The objective of the management strategy is to not overwhelm the medical industry, is to not let people get sick so fast in such great numbers that they cannot be treated. They know that people are going to get sick, and they know it's going to be a while before this is dealt with. None of that has changed. So don't let your guard down, especially if you've got any breathing problems, diabetes, any of these other things that seem to be putting people at risk statistically. Order a steak and have it delivered. It'll taste just as good. Next.
Yep.
Oh, I didn't mention on that one. 211 is a pandemic hotline right now. If you've got any concerns, it's a 24/7 health hotline. Give them a call.
Yeah. Also on that note too, please, if you know of anybody that may not be speaking, that may work with you, for you, that does not speak English primarily, 211 is still a resource for them. So please make note of that and pass that information on. All right, this is a little bit of a redundant slide, but it is horrifying to look at if you see this. Wildfire has been extremely destructive. I think the main thing that I just wanted to say in this is it's real. And our own fire marshal, Don Bullard, had a brother that was in Paradise when the fire happened, and he was at home, and they had with his wife and his son, and they had received this phone call stating that they had received that a PSPS, the public safety power shut off was going to happen at around 4 a.m. And so he had to work the next day. So he woke up at about 5. Still no alert had gone out, or the power had not been shut off. So he woke up at 5. The power's still on. He's like, great, okay. So he got up and got ready and drove to Chico, which is about 45 minutes away from Paradise, to go to work. Then when his wife woke up a little bit later, she took their son to school at 8 o'clock, and then she drove to work, which she worked at Safeway. It was about 2 miles away from their home. And then about 8:30 is when she receives this mandatory evacuation. And so she's like, okay, I have to go get my son immediately, right? So she gets in her car, she's driving, there's no cell phone reception automatically, it's just pure chaos, right? So she goes, okay, she picks up her son, they go back into their neighborhood to go to their house so they could pack everything, pack their dogs, and then they can evacuate. As they're driving to their house, they are looking from side to side. They see roofs on fire, lawns on fire. There are embers just pouring down and raging. It looks like the apocalypse to them. They are horrified, right? They realize once they get to their house, they have literally no time at all. They grab their 3 dogs. That's it. That's all they could grab. And what was inside of their safe, they had a safe. So they grab whatever was in their safe and they grab their dogs and they get in their vehicle and they head out, which their safe had some very important documents along with like some rifles and some other items. And then as they're evacuating down the main roadway, which was Skyway, it was a double lane with like a double yellow center line. They realize like traffic is stopped and they're just sitting there and nobody is coming in the opposite direction. And they're just going, what is going on here, right? So they make this small moral decision, right? You think, okay, no, we're not allowed to go in that side of the road or anywhere because we're supposed to be going out of this way, right? But they go, you know what? It's life or death at this point. We're going to go out this way. So they go into the middle of the road and they drive down the middle to evacuate. And she can hear people honking and screaming and yelling. And she's just, I have to evacuate, right? After a little while, the son turns around. He's looking, he realizes there's a caravan of vehicles following them. It's like, once one person does it, everybody goes, oh, we can do this, right? And I mean, yeah, realistically, yes, you're doing it for survival at this point. So,
well, yeah, there was a 2-lane bottleneck on a piece of road that could handle 5 lanes of traffic, and
yeah.
no one's driving into it. So,
yeah, and what's really unfortunate about that situation is they had planned and prepared. They had done evacuations, but they had done them in the opposite direction, and it was sad. So they owned 2 homes there. They lost both homes. They survived, obviously. When they went back, what they wanted to share when they were explaining to other people about the lessons they learned were, they had planned a lot. They had a safe, they had their documents, they were able to save their dogs, all this stuff, but there were some things that they didn't realize that they should have put some kind of coverage on, taking pictures of, which was he did woodworking. So he had a lathe in the back in a shed that he did not document. So he wasn't reimbursed, some of the other items within the household. He said, you need to just go through with your phone, just explaining what you're looking at, what's in your house, to document exactly what you have in every room. I mean, they were some of the fortunate ones, even though how can you say it's fortunate when they've lost basically everything? But I just want to impose to you that if this ever does happen, this is why it's crucially important to just be prepared and to leave in advance, as you can see how destructive these fires were. And I don't mean to be the Debbie Downer or to give the scare tactics of these stories, but that's all I have on this slide. We can move forward to the next one.
Well, I would just say that, preparedness is not just about being prepared so that you don't die and so that you don't suffer during the event. It's so that you can put your life back together afterwards. so you have some record of where everything was. A lot of people don't take the simple expediency of, say, taking one bill from each of your accounts, each of your credit card accounts, each of your bank accounts. Make a copy of that and put it in your car, put it someplace else, so that if your home burns down, you can say, yeah, this is me, and I had these accounts before. Even though my passport, my driver's license, and everything burned up when I ran out of the house, I can establish that this is me. I've got a picture of it.
Yeah, and to that end too, you know, we are going to go into preparedness. I'll just save it actually for that.
Yeah. The one thing I want to add on this screen before we do leave it is please take a look, especially in the upper left corner. How many of these properties were burned down to the foundation with green trees standing around them, and some not so green trees standing around them? And there's a common myth that forest fires, that wildfires travel through the treetops. That is not, they're finding out, the most dangerous way that it travels in our communities. The way it travels is embers that land on top of a roof that sadly is fairly flammable. And that's why you can't put in a new wood shake roof in Woodside, for instance, because they burn so easily. But most of the places that you're looking at that burn to the ground burned down because an ember landed on the roof, burned through a tiny little hole, and then it burned from the inside and lit the place next to it and so forth. And you end up with places like this where you have blocks of trees with residents burned to the ground in between. And that's it. I'll go on to the next one. And I will try to go on to the next one. There we go.
Okay, so we're going to talk about wildfire, that major threat. We already have been, but we're going to get into exactly defensible space, hardening your home, what you can do in terms of what's required, what is recommendations, making a plan in advance, right? Your go kit, and then evacuation, what that means, right? Right now, I've been getting questions every day about evacuation. So we can move forward to the next slide.
So there we go. Preparing your home, and by the way, this is still a big focus, but
wait, let's hold on 1 second. Can you pop that video up right there?
Oh yeah. Let's see our cloud of smoke video. Hello, show the cloud of smoke. Oh my gosh. Sure, show it in Chrome. I wish my other computer hadn't crashed. Hadn't crashed 2 minutes before the presentation.
It happened. This is our first run, so you can share that screen once it pops up.
Well, it looks like it's just...
a heads up to anyone, we are going to be providing a lot of resources, websites, PDF documents. If you go to the WPV-Ready .org website, we have a whole page dedicated to all the PDFs that we talk about in this presentation and the links, the important links. So you don't have to, we did that because we were finding we were printing so much stuff out and handing it to people. And yes, I actually am one of those people that likes to have a physical document in my hand, but this is a much easier way to access everything.
Let's see what we have here on this one. So getting ready outside, there are two basic places where you need to prepare for the fire. One is inside your home with your family, hardening your home and preparing the members of your home to know what to do in the case of a fire. And the other one is outside of your home. And how do you make it harder for fire to reach your home? And the basic way that you do it is that you think about it in zones. And there's a zone actually right 0 to 10 feet. They call it, I think it's zone 0. Selena, what do you guys call that now? The zone 0? It's like the 0 to 5 feet.
0 to 5 feet.
Yeah, 0 to 5 feet. And basically what you're looking for in 0 to 5 feet around your house is you want to make sure that there's nothing burnable leaning up against your house, that you don't have a pile of pine needles that have gathered in a corner. Because wherever the wind blows a pile of pine needles or any other flammable thing that you didn't intentionally put there, well, that's right exactly where it's going to blow an ember during a wildfire. So watch out for things right up against your house. And then, of course, you want to watch out for things. You don't want to stack wood against your house, nothing flammable. Watch for flammable things right up against your house. Watch for things like, geez, do I have flammable siding? There are siding materials these days that are absolutely indistinguishable from natural products. At least I can't, without getting right up close and knocking on it, I can't figure out if it's wood or some synthetic that is non-flammable. Think about over time little projects to replace any little thing right up against your house. Go around your house and play this game with yourself. If you had a little coal, if you're carrying around a coal, thank you, Selena, for this one. You got a metal tongs with a coal, and you're going to look for any place you can stick that coal that's going to set your house on fire. Well, if you can find any one place like that, that's where Mother Nature's going to stick a coal in a wildfire, and do something about it as soon as you can. The next thing that you really need to worry about is just what do you have growing within about 30 feet of your house? You don't want things that burn easily. If you got junipers within about 30 feet of your house, why? They're beautiful, yes, but when a mature juniper burns, it burns at over 1,000 degrees. I've done this experiment. You cannot stand near a juniper when it's burning, and so I cut away all the junipers that were near my house. In fact, I cut away all the junipers on my property. I used to have quite a big area out back, and quite a big area out front. It was kind of the go-to shrub back in the day, and suddenly I realized I'm just kind of sitting in the middle of a flammable sea, and so we got rid of them all. And the place actually looks better. And it takes a lot less water because the trees are nice and mature, and you raise those limbs up, you got a nice place to sit out in the yard now. Come over sometime and I'll show you. And then, of course, going out from about 30 feet to 70 feet, you want to worry about things like how close together are the trees? What's growing underneath the trees? Is it easy for a fire to get from the ground into the trees and to go from tree to tree? If you can take out one tree and eliminate 90% of that risk, if there's just one tree that's touching between 3 or 4 others, get rid of that one. That's not going to hurt anything. It's going to look good when it's opened up a little bit. Trust me. And those are the basics. Just basically walk around your property and go out beyond 100 feet too. If you've got several acres out there and you've got a lot of old dead brush, you got some old trees lying around, the trunk laying on the ground is not so much of a concern as that branch sticking up in the air with dead twigs all over it. Just do some dressing up. Knock down those grasses that are getting brown, because those are the things that'll just race along the ground in a breeze and come knocking on your door. You just don't want them knocking on your door. And think like a flame. Just walk around and say, is there any place for me to live around here? If I'm a flame, would I be comfortable over there in that wood pile? How hard would it be for me to get from that wood pile over to the house? And then try to eliminate everything you find. And there's a lot of good material online, by the way, on the website, on our website, and on the CAL FIRE website. Fantastic material that'll take you through these things, huge checklists that you can just go through. You don't even have to think about it, just go through the checklist. And that's all I have to say on this one. Well, it's not all I have to say, but I should probably give it back to you.
So here we go. Thank you. Yeah. So we want to stress again that there is a big difference between what is required and what is recommended. There are certain things that are absolutely required within our fire district pertaining to fire code and wildland and the wildland urban interface, the WUI. But there are a ton of things that we just recommend you do to make your home more fire resilient. You know, this is what the fire marshal Don Bullard says. He says, you know, we make our homes weather resilient, right? Rain was resilient, wind resilient. We make them resilient to rodents, to bugs, but we still haven't figured out exactly how to make them resilient to fire. And we're doing this slowly by integrating such things as hardy board to build your house out of, having certain types of roofs, double pane windows, fire ember resistant vents. But as a whole, we are still trying to work towards this. Your role as a homeowner is part of this whole relationship that we have to make our whole community safe. So as each individual homeowner does their part, as a community, it raises our level of resilience. These are some of the things you can do. And now we just, in this presentation, it is the basics. We are not going to give you a whole list of all of these items. What we want to share with you is that the fire prevention division for Woodside Fire is amazing. They will come out and do a walk around of your property with you for free. And they will help you to make a plan to point out the things that you can work on to make your home more fire resilient. And if you are in the Woodside area, there is a matching fund program where they will match you up to, I believe it's $3,000 now.
$3,000.
Yes.
If you spend up $6,000 or more, they'll cover half of the first six. So they'll write you a check for $3,000, and they're pretty snappy about it too, I'll tell you.
Yeah, so you go in, it's a simple application. You have the fire district come out and do an inspection to tell you the kind of work you need to get done. You get it done, you get signed off. You can do it again the next year. So it's not a one-time thing. You can do it annually. The town has put more and more funds towards this because they realize it's a great program. As you can see in some of these pictures we have here, some of the obvious things that...
Let me mention, by the way,
yes.
that if you're familiar with this program from the past when it was called the Defensible Space Matching Fund, it is now called the Defensible Space and Home Hardening Matching Fund, because not only will they pay to like take down a dangerous tree or they helped me remove the junipers here. Turns out I needed a lot more than they were willing to.
Well, they covered, don't they cover vents now and
they cover vents,
shutoffs?
Spark arresters, and gas shutoff, earthquake gas shutoff valves. They cover a lot of home hardening things now, and they're very happy to keep paying you to harden your home and make your property more defensible.
Yeah. So I apologize if you recognize any of these residences in here. These were actually photos that were taken by our previous fire marshal, Denise. And I have to admit, I have been to a presentation where I had a resident go, "That's my house."
Yeah.
And I was, oh no. But it's important to just say these things. We're not trying to call you out, throw you under the bus. It's just, sometimes it is just, we needed to provide the information to you. So you just weren't aware of how much of a hazard it is to not maintain your roof line, if you live on a private road, to make sure that the road is maintained for access and evacuation, and that you just don't have a bunch of shrubs butting right up against your property.
Well, if this is your house, we'll come out and help.
Yeah.
We're not throwing you under the bus. I mean, we'll pull over and let you on the bus while we fix the house.
So like Chip said, embers are our #1 threat, and they can travel so far and ignite homes so easily. And with the amount of synthetic material our homes are built with, they burn extremely hot and extremely fast. And the toxins that they're sending out into the atmosphere, it is bad. So we are trying to prevent that from happening. And the reason why we see that these trees are still standing is they're just not as dense as these households. The embers can travel through limbs. So yeah, the trees will be standing afterwards. These houses will burn hot and fast. You can go to the next slide. Thanks.
Yeah, and you know, the lovely eucalyptus that we're trying to get rid of so aggressively, there is still so much eucalyptus in our area, and eucalyptus is notorious for throwing embers into the air that can go for half mile, a mile, sometimes more. And they've actually had that happen here, where a fire over on the west side of 280 would light a house on fire over in Emerald Hills. That happened a couple of years ago. So just be aware. So part of the home hardening is having a look at the ventilation of your attic space, also under your house, but most importantly, the attic space, because what they're finding is that not only do a lot of houses ignite due to something landing on the roof and finding a little crack in there. So please make sure you have a non-flammable material, as non-flammable as possible, on the roof. But then also, fire tends to create its own little weather system, and you get winds. And when there's a fire in the area, you're going to get a hot blast with embers blowing along the ground and through the air at low levels. And this stuff will get sucked right into the vents on your eaves and any kind of an opening it can find into the underside of your house. Just the way air flows, as it's blowing across your house, it's going to create a suction and pull those embers aggressively up into your attic space. And so getting ember proof or ember resistant material on there is very important. I had this done on my home a couple of years ago. There were 20 something vents into the attic space. There are a couple of triangular spaces at the end that had custom openings, and we needed to go and get a sheet. You can get this stuff in 3 foot by 3 foot sheets as well. And what it is it's a fine mesh on one side with a metal honeycomb that's chemically treated on the back of it. And when an ember gets sucked up against it, that honeycomb material on the back actually closes off. And of course, you have to replace it later, and it creates a bit of an additional cleaning. You have to clean these things out a little more often because they get clogged up with dust and whatnot, easier than a normal eave soffit vent, but it's well worth it. And I have seen this material. I have put burning material on a piece of this stuff and then blasted on it with a hair dryer, and just to see what gets through. And nothing got through that concerned me. So I went ahead and put them on everything, every way you can get into my attic. Now is sealed with some of this material, and you can get it online. The best stuff I found, and the stuff I installed, and I just recently did another search and kind of looked at all the stuff that's out there. It seems that the people that are making the most reliable, highly rated stuff right now is called Vulcan Vents. There's some stuff called Brand Guard out there, which looks to me like Vulcan Vent that's been packaged a little bit nicer. But you know, if you start out with Vulcan Vents, which you can get at bestmaterials.com, I just found to be one of the better prices. I strongly urge you to do a little research on your own, because you know how these things go. In a few weeks, it's likely to be a better price someplace else. But have a look at it, and any handyman can install this material. It's not toxic, it's not dangerous, it just needs to be well sealed and cover every vent. What else? Windows, tempered dual pane windows. If you have, for instance, a pine tree, let's say you got a 30-foot tall pine tree, 20 feet outside your bedroom window, and it lights on fire, for a minute or two, it's going to be radiating over 1,000 degrees of heat against the side of your house. If you have an old single pane window on that side of the house, it's going to shatter that, and it's going to then radiate over 1,000 degrees for long enough to ignite things inside, towels, carpet, wallpaper, what have you. So it's another great way for fire to get into your house. So, you know, look around. Especially start with any place where you've got something flammable within about 30, 40 feet of the side of your house. You want to make sure that you've got tempered glass and dual pane. Dual pane, not only does it really help you with energy management, stays warm in the winter and cool in the summer, but then it's harder to break any one of the panes, and after it breaks the first pane, it still has to break the second pane, and that's much harder to do. So these are much safer in a fire-prone area. And decks. This is something that a lot of people overlook. If you've got a deck anywhere around your house, you've probably got something underneath it that'll burn, whether you put it there or it just blew there or an animal drug it in there and made a nest. You've probably got something burnable under there. Have a look. Try and make sure that the deck is not burnable, that you know, if you need to, at least replace the posts that hold it up, and get rid of anything that's burnable underneath it. Try to keep it clean. It's very easy to overlook those, and you know, I can show you some pictures. There are some really classic pictures where, yeah, fire crews pulling up and they can see that it's just the deck, but boy, it's going so hard that by the time they get a hose out, the house is done. So watch out for your decks. Selena, is this one yours, I think?
Yes, it is. All right. So obviously you want to make a plan in advance, right? You want to make sure that you include all the members of your household. So whether it's children actually or older adults, even guests you might have coming to stay with you, if you have some sort of Airbnb or something, or if you have an in-law unit in the back, even people that may be working on your property, it's important that everybody kind of knows what the plan is in the event of a fire. Make sure you know all ways out. Major thing I get about evacuations is what's the evacuation route? Where are we supposed to go? What's the route? We don't know what the route is because a fire is dynamic and it's changing. And if we issue an order, it's going to be depending on the circumstances in that moment. What we want you to know is that it is essential that you know all of the ways in and out of your residence, and that you've driven them. I know I have spoken to people that live up in Emerald Hills, and when I used to work up at that fire station up at Station 19, I would have residents come in and go, all right, I'm looking for this address, and we had a big map on the wall, and it kind of just looked like a bunch of noodles. The streets just dropped into a bowl. And they're like, oh, well, I live right here, but I've never been in this area, and I'm trying to get to this address. And they're like, well, I've only driven this one way in and out. And maybe you only have one way in and out. Either way, you need to know all the ways to the main thoroughfares, right? So the main roads, the artery roads, Kenyatta Road, Portola, Alpine, 280, Woodside Road, all of those main ways. How do you get there? Practice them, drive them when dark, drive them when it's unfamiliar, because you don't want to have to figure out where to go when you can't see and when you're panicked.
Well, you want to be familiar with it by the time you need to use it in an emergency. And what I tell people is, you know, usually you find what you consider to be the fastest route in and out. And that's what you drive every day. Well, once a week, drive another way until you feel comfortable with that, such that if you had to make a run for it, you know exactly where you're going. And that's all. That's really just, you know, don't let yourself get into the habit of not exploring.
Yeah. Also too, so when you're making your plan, right, you want to make sure you have an out-of-state contact. It's extremely important. My brother, he lives in Arizona. He's my out-of-state contact. Make sure everybody in your household knows that. And then review the whole plan regularly. Put it up somewhere where everybody sees it. If your kids attend a school that's nearby, you can go onto the FEMA Ready website, I think it's ready.gov. Is that right, Chip?
I'm not sure. I'll check it.
Put it on our thing. It's on our website. So on there, you can actually fill out a communications plan into a small card size and print it up and put it in your bag. Oh, you got to go back.
Oh, I'm on the wrong computer. Oh, hold on.
And just print it out, and then you can put it in perfect in, their backpack and yours, because you want all the information necessary in there so that, and that they can look at it regularly. Also, you want to have a go kit, right? This go kit needs to have a backup if you wear glasses. You want to have extra medication. If you have pets, you want to make sure that they're accommodated for. I have a cat, and I would like to just say she has special needs. I have to give her Zyrtec every day, and she has to have a special food. So I have a very particular go bag for her. So make sure you account for everybody in your household. And a go bag is different than what we're going to talk about a little bit later in terms of emergency supplies. A go kit is you're grabbing that and going. So it's a smaller bag. It's just meant to hold you over. It can have a thumb drive of very important documents on it, or pictures. If you have a lot of pictures that you don't want to lose, but you don't want to have to pack them in, scan all those items in advance and put them on a hard drive. Or like I've had somebody say before, put them in the cloud, right? So you don't even have to carry them with you. Just make sure you think about these situations and you do it in advance. Planning, I like to tell people that you can plan for all different situations. And in the event that something happens, it may not be what you planned for, but because you've thought of so many different scenarios, you have more tools in your toolkit to be prepared for anything that might come up. So it's the idea of planning and preparing for things that might happen that'll give you a little bit more peace of mind. And on this too, extremely important to have your gas tank filled all the time. And I'm notorious. I tend to drive with a quarter of a tank or less, which is not good considering I live in San Jose. So having that routine where you just go and fill your gas tank when it's at half a tank is really important, because you don't want to be stuck in that line waiting for gas. And this is not even just with wildfires or earthquakes. It can happen during PSPSs where you see people waiting in line forever to get gas. So it's a good habit to have as well too, parking facing the exit. And actually I'll let Chip talk about this because we have a good story pertaining to CERT.
Yeah, so we were giving a class, and we always cover this, and I never really kind of looked at the parking lot to see if people were paying attention, and it occurred to me to do this. So we tell people, just kind of get in the habit of backing in, so that when you park, so that when you get into your car, you're just going forward. You put it into drive and you leave. Because think about this, if you've got 20 cars in a small parking lot and they're all pulled in forward, and now you all need to leave at once. Well, everyone's going to be having to back up first and then move forward. And everybody has to yield to each other to do that kind of complicated two-part exit maneuver. Whereas if everyone had parked when they came in, just taken a little extra time to park, backed in, you just casually, one after the other, drive out forward. No negotiating, no worrying about it. Hey, there might be smoke in the air. Well, that's okay. I know exactly where I am because I'm facing forward already. And the next day on this one class, the very next day, I wasn't even thinking about it. I just happened to look out the window and everybody's backed in. I said, Selena, come here and look at this. It's working. I've never seen it work so well. This is great. Keep talking.
Also, too, you don't want to have to try backing out of anything when you're in a panic state. And so I think that's the major thing is if you're panicked, you're just not going to be thinking straight. So make everything easier for you.
No, that's the one time I'm going to back up onto the rock at the end of my drive, and I know it's there, but I just got to get out of here, man. So, yeah, it's a good habit to get into. Also, you find that every time you get into your car and it's already facing out, and you just got to put it in drive and go, you pat yourself on the back. It just feels kind of good. It's like, yeah, that was great. I'm glad I took care of that maneuver when I was already in the car last time. It becomes a real positive experience. At least it did for me. Okay, next, do you have anything else to say here?
Nope. Next slide. Thanks.
Great. So part of making your plan is just think about, well, if I have to just run out the door and I've only got a minute or two, what do I grab? Well, you've got your go bag. You've got maybe your bag that has a week worth of meds in it. Make sure that you got your glasses and your wallet. And if you can't find out within 2 minutes, forget it. You're out the door. So you want to kind of organize this what to grab list in terms of, okay, I got 5 minutes. What do I grab? If I only have 5 minutes, you don't want to grab anything from you don't need any pots out of the kitchen. If you don't have this list, you're going to end up with a pot out of the kitchen. I guarantee it. Or an iron, or who knows.
Oh yes, I always like to say that it's panic packing is what it's called. So you're going to grab whatever you see, right? So
Yeah.
you have no idea what to grab, and you're just looking around, and you're going to grab that weird lamp in the living room, right? And you're going to grab the pots in the kitchen, the toaster. And then when you leave and you go to the shelter, wherever you're staying, you go to pull stuff out, you're going to realize that you just grabbed what you saw rather than what you needed.
Right. Yeah. And if you got 15 minutes, you're still worked up. You're still not thinking clearly. You don't want to grab a bunch of books that you meant to read when you need to grab that jewelry and maybe grab that print off the wall that you actually paid $100 for. And maybe you need to, whatever else is in the house and that you would like to make sure you got if you had 15 minutes. The point being, if you think about these things ahead of time and write them down, you're going to find that it's very easy to make a list of those things, and you'd be very happy you're not thinking about it while you're trying to get out the door with a fire coming over the hill. That's it. Just try to get used to thinking in those terms and stay safe. Number one rule of being helpful in an emergency is don't become a victim. All right, Selena?
Great. Okay, here, red flag days, right? We're pretty familiar with them in our area. They're issued by the National Weather Service, and obviously they're dependent on several factors, which are wind, humidity, temperature. What do you need to know when it comes to red flag day? Well, you need to know, the things you need to have a heightened sense of alert on these days. You need to be ready. You need to make sure your go kit is ready. You don't want to be operating any power tools or mowing your lawn or obviously doing any open flame activities, right? But the main thing is be alert. Have a radio next to you. Make sure that your SMC alert is working properly, that you're reaching out to your neighbors. Maybe one of your neighbors can see the area better than you. You're just checking in with each other because you never know. The red flag days are meant to say, hey, you need to have a heightened sense of alert on these days. If you smell smoke, if you see something, report it immediately, because we really do. The fire service definitely depends on you guys to report and help us in terms of locating, because we can get a call that comes in that says, oh, we have a smoke investigation in this general area, and we can actually waste a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on. And if you contact us, you might have a better view of where it's located exactly, so you can let us know. And if that is the case, please do not call our fire stations. Do not call me. Call 911. Please, 911 is our main phone, and because we may be out training somewhere in a different area, another agency may be covering our district, 911 is the fastest way to get help whenever you need it. Next slide, please. All right, this picture is terrible, but I have it on here. This is usually when I tell the story about actually Don Bullard, his brother, and their family. We don't want to see this. We don't want to see people bottlenecked on the road. We want people to evacuate early. We don't want to see these cars on the side of the road. We want you to be aware, and we want you to evacuate if you feel unsafe by any means. Go to the next slide because it'll have a little bit more info on it. This is that the pleas on the bottom was actually made up by our retired fire marshal, Denise Ania. Shout out to Denise. Please leave early and save everyone. It's true, right? So if we were to push out an evacuation order or an order or warning or shelter in place, it's going to go out in SMC alert. And it is a collaborative order. So it's not just Woodside Fire determines that we need to have an evacuation. We work with San Mateo County Office of Emergency Services, and we work with the Sheriff's Department in order to create the order and push it out to everybody. And this is our terminology. So we'll either send out an evacuation warning to tell you leave as soon as possible, which basically just says leave, right? If you get a warning, that's leave. Don't wait around. And then evacuation order means you need to leave immediately. And if we do issue an evacuation order and we have an evacuation route for you, we will specify that in the SMC alert. If there's somehow we have an area we want you to evacuate to, that will be specified in the evacuation and the SMC alert order as well. If we do not have that in there, that means we don't have the specific for it, but we're not going to push out an evacuation order unless we have some specific information. And we're actually working with a company called Zone Haven right now to create evacuation maps, and they're very they're live, shall we say, very organic, and they're evolving. So they're going to work with Waze and local entities to determine exact information that we would need for these maps for agencies that would be coming in, responding, and giving live time information of how to evacuate. But the main thing is you need to know what your evacuation routes are. Shelter in place, that means to stay in your current location, and we really don't see ourselves issuing that unless it's some very dire situation or we feel like it is a safe situation to do that. We would hope that we can issue an evacuation warning as soon as possible. But if you are at home, again, and you just don't feel safe, you smell a little bit of smoke, you're calling some neighbors, they're saying some things, that is a sign for you. If something's telling you I need to leave right now, leave. You can always leave, and then if nothing happened, you can go back. But you don't want to wait until that time where all of a sudden everybody's now trying to get out because they waited for somebody to tell them to leave. All right, next slide, please. Okay, so I know that was very brief on touching wildfires, but again, this is a basics class, so we just want to get you kind of thinking about all the different things. It's a lot of information, and we understand it, but for those of you that have taken some of our training before, probably have heard a lot of this info, and if not, great. This is all great. The idea is to share it and make sure you and your neighbors are prepared. So the next thing we want you to prepare for are earthquakes. We're going to talk about how to earthquake proof your house in small ways and big ways. Again, how to make a plan, right? What kind of disaster supplies you may need, and what to do exactly during and after an earthquake. Next slide, please.
And
This
yes, this one is me. Anchoring your heavy furniture. Really, I was quite surprised. The first time I took, actually, my first emergency preparedness class, I believe, was a CERT basic training class. And that's where this concept came up of, hey, just go around and check everything that's as tall as you and see, pull on it gently try to figure out what it would do in an earthquake. And if you think it would fall over, fix that. So it turns out that I was quite fond of freestanding bookshelves and antique china cabinets and things like that, that certainly would have easily fallen over in a major earthquake. In fact, when I was in the Loma Prieta earthquake, I was in Cupertino on the second floor of a wooden apartment complex. And things did not go well there. A lot of tall things ended up being short piles of rubble. And I'll tell you more about that one. Appliances and office equipment. I was quite stunned at how far some things moved during that earthquake. And you can find a lot of footage of these things in test environments and realistic scenarios and videos of people just walking through their homes after an earthquake saying, well, the dishwasher used to be over here and now it's over there, and it pulled out all the pipe as it was shaken across the floor. And if you've got a gas stove, it can pull out all your gas lines as it's shaking across the floor and start a fire and so forth. So you really want to take a look, make sure that your appliances are secured in place. They will tend to, during a big vibration and floor moving back and forth, they will tend to move. And it just depends really on what direction and what frequency the waves are coming in. But they can move quite a distance, easily far enough to tear out the utility lines feeding into them. Cabinet doors with child-proof fasteners, that's one very good way to secure the doors. That there's little fasteners where the door opens an inch or so and you just reach in and push back the latch and it opens the rest of the way. Those are very good. Anything that helps there. I have bookshelves in my office with a number of books sitting up over my head right now. And what I did is I cut some pieces of wood, nice hardwood, and put them on the front so that there's a lip, so that at least the books don't just throw off the edge. They're going to have to make it to that lip and then be shaken over the lip before they crash onto my head, which would probably happen anyhow. We'll see. I can tell you that in this very office, which I have taken great lengths to harden and try to anticipate all of those little things, there was a shelf that was not quite long enough to rest entirely on one of its pegs. And when we had that last earthquake that shook this area enough to just shake my shelf back and forth the long way, it popped off. And I ended up with about 50 pounds of books sitting all over everything that was on my desk. I didn't lose anything valuable except my pride. And now that shelf is in there much more solidly. You know, it's mostly about getting into a habit of going around your house and just thinking about what else could fall over, what else could go wrong. Earthquake proofing your shelves, as you see in the diagram down there at the bottom. There's all sorts of little kits you can put on top of a bookshelf, on the back of an antique piece of furniture you got, whatever you have. If it's tall enough to fall over, if shaken, then for a couple of bucks, for just a couple of bucks, you can secure this and be much safer. Also, in general, hey, don't put things over your bed. When someone first pointed that out to me, I used to have this beautiful painting over the bed. Not anymore, because when they said, well, where's that going to end up when you drop it? Oh, right on my head. Yeah. And so that's gone. There's nothing over my bed anymore. My bed is also not up against a window because I don't want glass coming in and cascading over my face. Make sure you know where your gas and electric shutoffs are, your main utilities, and your water, and know how to shut them off. And just be aware there's this one little trick. Every one of these utilities, gas, electricity, and water, they have a meter that will be running if there's anything flowing through your system. So after an earthquake or any other kind of a big event like that, go around and try to turn everything off, and then go look at your meters. And it should all be zero. There's going to be a little electricity. Something's going to be using that. There's going to be a little gas because you got pilot lights running and so forth. But there should be very little activity, you know. And if there's a question in your mind about what's just very little activity, well, hey, go turn things on right now and take a look at your valves. That's what they look like when they're really busy. If they still look like that after an earthquake and you think you've turned everything off, you've probably got a leak. Then's when you want to really worry about shutting off the main. And we can teach you a lot more about that. Take the CERT class. We'll teach you all about that. And we're going to be posting some more support material about utilities and how to deal with all of that. But you should know, at the very least, where gas, electric, and water valves are and the meters are, and have a decent idea of how to shut them off. Your water heater, by the way, may not be strapped to the wall, and it may not have flexible conduit. If you've got gas water heater, it may not have flexible conduit to it. If you're in an older house, if you've had any work done in the last decade or so, it's now the law that they have to be secured. They can't even work on your stuff if they don't secure it and put on flexible lines so that it doesn't just tear out and cause a fire. And in general, kind of make sure you got flexible gas lines on everything. If you've got a gas stove, gas dryer, gas water heater, whatever you have in the house that's using gas, make sure that it's connected with a flexible line. And if not, call your handyman. If you don't have a handyman, call me. I'll find someone to get out there and install. It's just a plumber. All you need is a plumber or a guy with the plumbing tools to install those lines. It's a very simple job. And that's about it about preparing before. Let's get into that bed situation. This is a person sleeping soundly in bed precisely because she does not have a lot of stuff over her head. And under her bed, she has sneakers and a flashlight in just a simple bag that is tied to the leg of the bed, so that in an earthquake, it doesn't go marching off under the bed where she can't reach it. And if the power is out and the window has broken and now she's in the dark with broken glass all over that hardwood floor, she does not have a problem, because she can grab that bag with shoes and a flashlight, and she can protect herself enough to get to better clothing and to begin to put things back together. So that's the big takeaway here. Get a bag like this. You can get a laundry bag. They had mesh laundry bags. That's what I keep underneath my bed. Put a flashlight in it.
Yeah, I want to say that that's like the first thing we teach when we teach CERT, is to go home that first night and to put a flashlight, preferably a headlamp, so your hands are free, and a sturdy pair of shoes underneath your bed. And I had one resident come back to me and say how important it was to secure that bag to a bedpost, because not only earthquakes, but animals can move those bags. So it's very important to make sure that they stay secured under there.
Yeah, absolutely. I also put in my bag a military style knife, K-bar knife, and a GMRS radio, so that I'm pretty much in touch with the world and ready to, you know, if my door is jammed or what have you, I've got a basic tool there to start working on things. Your bookshelves, water heaters, again, we touch on, just secure anything. Look around and as you walk through every room in your house, just casually, you don't have to freak out and do all this today. Make it a habit of thought when you're sitting in a room to look around and ask yourself, what could fall down and hurt me if it started to shake right now? And over time, you want to make that be less of a threat. And really, that's about it. Common sense, common sense thinking.
as if that wasn't enough, right? I think right now during our current situation and being in this shelter in place order, I know I have done a lot of spring cleaning and purging, but this is a great opportunity to kind of assess. And again, like we keep stressing, sitting down with your family and discussing any situations that might occur. So we can use this as, a positive thing, the situation we're in, because it gives us time now to focus on things that we might not have thought we had time to do before. So getting our home hardened or getting it earthquake proof. Now you have a little bit more time, and you can incorporate the whole family to do it because you guys are all in there together. Perfect. Thanks, Chip.
Hey, Selena, I'm going to throw you under the bus for just a second here and ask you to tap dance while I try to pull this up on another computer.
Video on there?
Yeah, I want to see if I can get this to play better.
Yeah, the next couple of videos that we have on here actually just kind of, one of them just shows the jolting of an earthquake, and the second one is the one I really kind of like. But I wish Chip didn't actually share the story I wanted him to share with you, which was what happened when the earthquake, the 89 earthquake happened at his house. So a lot of these things here, when it talks about bookshelves and water heaters and small objects, there's a lot of things that you can get to secure picture frames on like a countertop, and secure things to the wall. You don't have to do major searching. Amazon and Google are amazing resources to find everything you need. We don't like to put all of that information on here because it can be quite overwhelming, but we do have it on our website. Again, it's WPV-Ready.org. It actually has our full program on there that talks about all the items you could possibly buy. Oh, are we gonna play it?
We are experiencing quite a bit of shaking. If you'll give us a brief moment here, we're making sure that nothing is going to come down in the studio here.
And it is going for quite a bit, everybody. It continues.
This is a very strong earthquake.
Strong here.
8:21 here on the air. We're experiencing very strong shaking. I think we need to get under the desk.
All right, we're going to go to break.
We'll be right back. We'll be right back.
Wow.
So again, we go back to making a plan, right? It can be very similar. It's a similar plan as what you would do for wildland fire. A lot of it is the same, but you want to make sure you have all the important medical information. So you have doctors, school information, any other service providers that you may want other people to know about. And everybody in your household is aware of it. So you share this information with everybody, because in an ideal situation, you and your family will all be together and you will have your pets with you and you will have everything ready, but that is not realistic. Realistically, you will all be in different areas. One of you may be away at work, another may be at school, one at home. And so you have to plan for that because you're probably not going to be able to communicate. So how can you then ensure everybody in the household knows what's going on and that you're okay? I know for a fact in my household, I live with my boyfriend and my cat on the third story of an apartment. And he said, well, what am I going to do if there's an earthquake? And I don't know what this is, Chip.
You want to try this video? I think I can make this look good. So
all right, let's try it. It's pretty funny. So
real quick, let's see if it'll just play for us. No sound. Are you going to do that to me?
okay, you got the idea of it there.
Good. Okay. I'll be back to you in just 1 second.
So as I was saying, my boyfriend asked, well, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to know if, you came to the house or if you were there? I said, well, whoever gets to the house first is going to grab the cat in the go bag, and they're going to leave, and they're just tie a scarf or a bandana or whatever you can on the outside railing of our apartment, wherever if one of us can see. All right, I visibly see that they tied something obvious there. I think you went too far, Chip.
One
They
more
tied
time.
something obvious there. So I told him that's going to be our plan. And then we're going to meet down the street at his brother's house. And then we have a secondary place. So just make sure you have that plan and you share it with everybody. And again, practice makes perfect, because, kids go off to school, people move out, you get new pets. You need to revisit this every year also too, just to refresh in your head. And I think I shared on the chat room the ready.gov website where you can make a plan on there. Okay, now we can go to the next slide, Chip. Thanks.
Yeah, so food, a lot of people are concerned about getting food, survival food, tastes so bad. And well, then what should I get? Well, you don't want to get canned food that's very salty because you don't want to be very thirsty, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it turns out that these days you can get some very tasty and completely balanced nutrition food. And this is an example, this company called Mountain House. If you go to Google and you look for Mountain House, you're going to get 7 pages of options of prepared meals. You can get 24 servings, I think, just of beef stew, or you can get 24 servings of like this classic meal assortment that's shown here. And this literally comes in a bucket with a handle. And I've tasted some of it. It actually tastes like what it says. You could do a blind tasting of this and tell what you're eating, which wasn't true back in the day when I was camping and we did those experiments on the trail. I didn't know if I was eating bacon and eggs or beef stew. Well, the bacon and eggs actually taste like decent bacon and eggs. I mean, my option would be for fresh bacon and eggs, but if I'm out and if I'm someplace without my house is all shook down and I want some bacon and eggs, well, I love some of this Mountain House stuff. It's very good. Requires little or no cooking for prep, and there are even some products out there now. They're more expensive than this, but basically you open the pouch and put some water in, and it has a self-heating chemical element in it in a separate pouch. But you shake this thing up, and after a few minutes, it's a full cooked meal. So you don't even have to worry about cooking. With these, you still need to heat it up over a little camp stove or something. If you do want to go ahead and stock your own stuff, if you're just fine eating Dinty Moore beef stew for a few days, well, make sure that you choose some options that are low in sodium, because one of the things you don't want to have to do is carry a lot of extra water around because you're eating a lot of salty foods. So your beef jerky is probably not a very good choice. Dried fruits, great. Anything in a can, great. Make sure you keep it fresh. Don't let it go bad in storage. If it's going to get warm, it's going to get
Go to the
cold.
next. Yeah, you can go to the next slide to talk about that. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there we go. Inspect it regularly, especially if you have things stored outside. I know a lot of people, I also store some dried rice and beans. And you got to watch out, boy, because I tell you, if a rodent even thinks there might be a rice or bean grain available inside of something, it'll go through stainless steel to get at it. It's just amazing what I've seen the mice and rats chew through in the town of Woodside and Portola Valley to get at just a little bit of tasty grain.
Yeah, I have residents that go, okay, where are we supposed to put all this stuff? Where am I supposed to store food? Because, FEMA says, okay, 3 days, right? Realistically, what we're thinking, because of where we're located, I would say 1 to 2 weeks of food is really what you would want. that can
Yep.
be a lot of food when you're looking at a family, right? Maybe you don't store it all in one place. I can't tell you exactly where you would need to store it. Some people may put some in their garage, and then maybe they have a closet in their house where they store some of it. You just need to make sure that it is airtight, tightly sealed. We also say double seal it. So you wrap it in maybe a industrial garbage bag, and then you put it into an airtight plastic container to preserve it that way as well.
Sure, yeah. Or you put it inside of a double Ziploc, put that inside of some big Tupper containers and store that inside of a 100-gallon Coleman cooler, and keep that tightly locked and sealed up in your yard, or in the garage, someplace where you feel it's going to be accessible in an emergency. But check it, no matter how you do it, no matter what you're storing, check it occasionally, so you know you got good food when you need it. There's some new stuff out, by the way, that is for marine emergency supplies. I saw this being sold just last week, and one pouch of this stuff has 9 cubes in it. Each one is supposed to be a fully balanced nutrition meal. They say it doesn't taste bad. It's like eating a large piece of cornbread. I haven't tried it myself, so I can't vouch for it. But there are options out there, and they don't just taste terrible anymore. Most of them taste pretty good now. So do a little shopping on Google, find something you like, and make sure you got a couple of weeks worth. FEMA is starting to change their story, by the way, too. I've seen some recommendations from them saying that, you know, really you should plan for 2 weeks. You won't be sorry. And that's about it. Oh no, I'll touch on preparation. Again, you know, you can get the stuff that doesn't really require any preparation, can be eaten dry, can be, you can pay the extra money for the stuff that self-cooks in a pouch and so forth. For just, you know, for about 20 bucks, you can get a really good little camp stove and set of pots, and you keep that with the food. And they have little fuel pellets now that store forever. This Mountain House food, I think, stores for 10 or 20 years. I forget what the expiration on that was, but it's incredibly long-lived stuff. And most of the stuff nowadays that's sold for camping or survival purposes is not only tasty, but will just last for years and years and years. And again, for about 20 bucks, you can get yourself enough cooking equipment to cook up a tasty meal just about wherever you are, if you have some water. And that's what we'll talk about next. So storage of water, how to get water, where to get water. Number one thing we kind of recommend to everybody is that you should have about 15 gallons of water. That's 2 weeks. Figure a gallon a day. So 15 gallons per person gives you 2 weeks per person. If you got that much stored, you're way ahead of the game. Very easy to store water so that it's good. Water that is stored, pure water, will be pure water in a million years. The problem with keeping water pure and storing it pure is the contaminants. And it is devilishly hard to get all of the contaminants out. So we start with the water as pure as we can get it. Filter it. If you've got a filter system, just start with the cleanest water you can get, and then you add a little sanitization to it. And the easiest thing to do there is add a little bleach to it. All of the instructions for that can be found on this web page, by the way, under the WPV-Ready.org/buy. You'll see a page where you can buy 5-gallon water containers, and on that page, there's a PDF you can download. It has instructions for sanitizing and you know, how often you should replenish and so forth. You know, I try to do every 6 months, change the water out, but in reality, I'm kind of lazy because I have a swimming pool that is regularly chlorinated, and I have a lot of sanitation equipment. So I don't check my stored water. It's still very convenient to have some of these water containers around, even if you have ready access to pure water, and enough bleach around to sanitize it. Again, that's the big problem. If you have a swimming pool, after about 3 days, if the chlorination has stopped, you don't want to drink that. It can be full of algae and other biological contaminants that you don't want to drink. But it's very easy, again, to treat it and make it drinkable in just a few minutes with a little bleach. And there are other methods for doing that. One of the good methods that you'll find here on the lower left is a product called the Lifestraw. And that'll remove all the living stuff. It'll remove all of the particles. It'll remove most of the contaminants except for dissolved chemicals from whatever water you might need to drink. So you could stick this, if you came upon a scuzzy lake, as long as there was no chemical contamination in that, you could drink out of it. And you could be just looking right at the algae growing on it, not a problem. You can drink through this Lifestraw and get pure water out of it. And you can get, I think, 2,000 gallons or 2,000 liters. I forget. It's enough to keep you going for quite a while. One of these Lifestraws, they're under $20. And they really are no bigger than that.
It's too bad we didn't have our actual live class because we raffled this stuff off.
I know. We got to figure out how to do that online. We could probably make it a better presentation if we do it online, next time we do it. Well, I want to do this class again online, maybe even before we post it, because we've had so many technology problems this time. And I apologize again to everyone, but we're getting the material out there.
All right, okay, everybody has probably seen, hopefully you've all seen this. It is specific now in that it says drop, cover, hold on. It used to say just drop, cover, hold. We want you to hold on. We cannot stress enough how important it is not to get in a doorway. We used to say get into a doorway. You know what? You are up high. Things can hit you in there. We don't know what is being supported by that doorway. It's with modern houses, it's just not safer. They can't protect you from falling and flying objects. Doors can swing in and out. Do not get in a doorway. Drop to the ground where you are at. If you can cover, you want to be able to cover your head immediately. You want to protect your head and your neck, and you want to try to hold on to something. Do not go and try to run outside. Even if you think, oh, the doorway is right there, I can get outside. Don't try to do that. Drop to the ground. Make your surface area as small as possible as well. If you've ever heard of the triangle of life, if not, please ignore this part and put your fingers in your ears. But the triangle of life was an idea that during an earthquake, pieces of furniture could collapse and fall and create like a triangle void. And so they were telling people to go and crouch down near a wall or close to a wall. But realistically, we cannot be sure of how a building is going to collapse. So there's no way to make sure that a building is going to provide you with a safe void. If you're in a vehicle, I didn't get to experience the earthquake in '89 in a vehicle. I was playing earthquake, actually. Always love to tell that story in a trailer. But you see these videos of the roadway shaking or people talking about when they were in a car, everything was kind of wobbly. Just stop your car, pull over, stop your car, and just stay inside of there. Don't get out, don't do anything. If you're in bed, just stay in bed, protect your head, crouch, try to protect yourself. If you're outdoors, stay outdoors. Try if possible to make sure that you're not underneath any wires or anything that can come down on you. You're not next to a wall that can collapse onto you. Just whatever you do, don't go trying to run to another location. Chip, can you go to the next slide, please?
Yes,
and then wait it out, right? So,
by the way, I just want to add that, some of these changes in advice, these are based mostly on studies of what they found since they started giving the advice. And they found that people who try to shelter in this triangle of life do not fare as well. People that try to shelter in doorways get more injuries. The people that survive the best are the ones that drop, you get under something and hold on. So it's really statistical. And some of it they don't understand fully yet, but they find that that's where people are surviving.
Yeah, and there actually is an app. It's called My Shake, right? And you can download that app. I'll put that in chat right now. And I have it on my phone, and actually it will notify you if there is a certain magnitude earthquake within a certain proximity of you and try to give you a warning. And I can actually say it works because my boyfriend actually had it go off while he was in the shower. He had just finished. He was about to get out, and he hears his phone saying, "Earthquake warning, find cover, drop cover, hold on." And he's like, "What?" So what does he do? He does, and I hate to say this, he does exactly what I don't want people to do. He grabs my cat, our cat, and he stuffs her in our go bag, or her go bag, and runs outside, all 3 stories outside. Well, it wasn't a major earthquake. I think it was just how we had his setting. So it was a very small magnitude, but it was close enough that it set off his phone. And so he was standing outside in the middle of all the apartment buildings with a backpack and a cat sticking out of it. And I'm sure everybody enjoyed that. But if we do have to go through an earthquake, we want to make sure that you wait until the shaking has completely stopped. So once it's stopped, you sit there and you work from where you're at out. So you assess immediately, am I okay, right? Did I hurt myself? You know, your adrenaline is going to be going. You may not be aware if something happened, something might have hit you or struck you. So make sure you check yourself top to bottom. Okay, I'm not bleeding. I don't have any bones sticking out, whatever it is, scratches, glass, I'm okay. Okay. Then you're going to make sure your family's okay. The people that are directly around you, you're going to shout to them, ask them if they're okay. Okay, come to me, you know, right? So the circle gets a little bit bigger. And then at that point, you can go outside and assess for damage of your household. Make sure when you walk outside and you look around, you're not just looking from side to side. You want to look up, you want to look down, you want to look all the way around. And because of aftershocks during an earthquake, you want to be extremely cautious when you do this. And then after that, you want to make sure you check on your neighbors. It's important to make sure your neighbors are okay because they may be the ones checking on you afterwards. So build or start small from where you're at and then work your way out slowly.
Yeah, I want to also mention, and this is something that a lot of people don't think about in a building, and not so much in your home as in an office building or any other public building, but yes, in your home as well. After an earthquake, look up everywhere. There can be electrical wiring, there could be pipes and what have you that have come loose and are hanging down and are a threat right at head level. You don't want to walk into a live wire, you know. So just the urge is, especially if it's at night and you got a flashlight, to be watching where you're stepping. But boy, every time you come into a new area, look around real quick and look up.
Yeah, so going into the next slide, I had somebody just mention utilities. So this, Chip, you talked about it a little bit earlier, and you can touch on this again, but then also I want you to mention the automatic shutoff valves that we have. Usually we have one to show you guys, but we don't, but we can actually at least talk about them.
Yeah, I'm gonna make a note on that, and maybe we'll put in a little blurb there on the notes when we post this on YouTube. So, you know, these are generally what your different utility systems look like. The typical valve for your gas is going to be this just stubby little thing on the pipe. And if it is, if the little stub sticking out is in line with the pipe, it's on, it's running. Gas can go through it. If it is horizontal, or if it is crossways to the pipe, then it's shut off. When you're looking at your main breakers for the electrical system there, you've got, of course, a breaker that's probably all you usually think about when something blows a fuse. One of those individual switches down below is going to need to be reset. Well, there's also a main breaker that shuts off your whole house. Kind of just open the panel now, make sure you know where that is, what that looks like. If you do feel that you need to shut off the power, what you want to do is you want to shut off individual circuits one after the other first, and then shut off the main breaker. And when you are turning things back on, you do it in the opposite order. You make sure everything's shut off, then you turn on the main breaker, and one after another turn on the individual circuits, and give it 5 seconds in between each one, because a lot of things suck some power when they're starting up, especially things like if you've got printers in your house someplace hooked up to a computer. You know, anything that makes a noise when it's starting. Televisions these days do this. They go through a boot up process. So many things do this now that if you were to turn everything on at once, it would almost certainly blow all your breakers again. It would just overload the whole system. So give it 5 seconds in between turning each one of these things on, and you're much less likely to have a problem there. Then your gas valve probably looks like this, little jobby on the right. Again, they're almost always lined up with some kind of valve like this. When it's in line with the pipe, it's open. When it's crossed the pipe, it's closed. Excuse me, the water main there. Now, some water systems have a pipe that you need to get at, and it's in the ground. Or all you have is a tiny little stub there that you need to turn. And there are tools. Oh gosh, you know, Selena, that's another thing we don't have is the tool to show. I've got to remember to put that up too. You know, please make a note for those two things, the gas shut off and the tool, so that we can send that out to everyone here. So there's a tool that lets you get at it, even if yours is down in the ground where you got to pull a concrete lid off and get at your water shut off. They're very easy to get at with one of these little $20 aluminum tools. Very little to worry about shutting your water on or off. Again, if you have to worry about your utilities, the thing to start with is if you see a leak, if you see that there's any sparking someplace, you've got an electrical problem, turn it off. If you see that there's water coming out of one of your walls, well, it's probably not something you can turn off without turning off the main. So turn it off. If you smell gas in your house someplace, probably a good time to just shut off the whole system at the main there. If you don't see a leak, if you don't detect a leak, then turn everything off and go look at the meters. If the meters are still going fast, you probably got a leak. Shut it off. A good thing to get, we touched on earlier, is the automatic earthquake shutoff valves, which you can get very easily installed these days. Again, of course, you don't want to do it without a licensed plumber working on your pipes. PG&E gets a little sticky about that too. They don't want you working without a licensed person. Be aware that there is a section of the pipe between the meter and your home that you may own, and if you put valves or shutoffs of any sort on that section of the pipe, then PG&E doesn't really have any complaint with you if you turn it back on. That section of pipe has to be up to the same code as your home, which is different from the public pipe on the other side. If it's not up to the same code as your home, then it's considered PG&E still. So that being said, you can put these things on either side and they work. The automatic shutoffs, I've experimented with them. They're pretty handy dandy, and I've never heard of anybody complaining that they shut off their gas because a truck went by on the street, or because there was some minor little rumble or something like that. No, they seem to actually only shut off your gas in situations where the shaking is bad enough that you would go and shut off your gas. So I feel pretty good about putting those in. I haven't put one in yet here, but I plan to. That's about it. I guess the one thing, though, that I would add is I'm going to send you out some material. I think we've got everybody's emails here. I'm going to send you out some material about this shutoff tool. And I would say get one of these tools, or just get a good crescent wrench and hang it on a string, on a long string, so it's not hanging from the pipe. Put a long string from the pipe to the wrench and set the wrench on the ground there near the pipe. So you know if you need to run around and shut things off, you're not looking for a crescent wrench first, or you're not looking for the tool first. It's attached to the place where you're going to need it. And that's about it. Selena?
Yep, that's what I would say. Okay, just very briefly, we're not going to get into first aid treatment. We just want you to be aware and maybe spark your interest in taking training, more additional training, that you are the help until help arrives. And what does that mean? That basically means that you're going to be the first responder. So you're going to be the one that may need to call 911. We, as first responders, as the fire district, we need the residents to be able to take care of each other, protect them from harm. If if there is an earthquake and somebody maybe twisted their ankle and they can't walk, that you're going to be able the one to move them away from a dangerous scene. Also, you need to know how to stop bleeding if necessary. Some of these are the major ones. So the killers is what we call them. So the bleeding, airway, right? So you want to make sure that somebody can breathe. They're not face down in the ground. If you're concerned about a spinal injury and neck injury and they're face down in the ground and they can't breathe, it's not going to matter at that point because they're going to stop breathing. So you need to do the best that you can without being so concerned. I know I have a lot of residents that come up to me and they're like, well, I don't feel comfortable helping because I don't want to get sued. There are Good Samaritan laws that protect you. And even further, if you get more involved in some of our programs, we do have protection for our volunteers. But the main thing is you are going to be the help, and that's okay. We're not expecting you to be a superhero, to be a doctor, but even just providing comfort to somebody. Maybe it's an older adult that lives next door to you that lives alone, and the power's been out, and you just go over next door to check on them because they don't have internet anyway, or maybe they have no relatives. Making sure that you're there to make to see if they're okay, if they need anything, especially during this pandemic. We've had a lot of residents that have been extremely helpful in making sure everybody who is at risk gets the help that they need. Oh, there's Chip. Hey, so next slide, please.
Hi. I just figured out I had another camera here. Sorry.
Next slide, please. I think it's you.
Yes, hello. So now I have to click on that and then that, yes.
Yeah.
So we actually do have a first aid kit that was designed by doctors and emergency medical technicians in the area, and has also been praised by some doctors who have bought it subsequently. And we sell this at the WPV-Ready.org site. Again, /buy, and you'll see it there on the menu. These have none of the fluff stuff that you would get if you bought a kit like this online or at Costco, for instance, for this amount of money. And they have a lot more of the things that you're likely to need in the event of an earthquake, which is the major anticipated emergency that you're going to need to grab something for around here. So we're talking about cuts, bruises, scrapes, just the casual thing that now you're running around in the neighborhood. I get stung by a bee. We have some bee sting pads in here. You need some glucose for someone who's diabetic. They need to get just all the basics are in here, and you can look at the contents list online. I'm sorry, I'm not used to having to worry about there being a camera. Hi, I'm still.
It's okay. Yes, we actually put our store on hold. I just had a person ask about that. We had to put our store on hold because of the pandemic. We didn't want to continue to sell all these items and not be able to distribute them. But now that we're kind of sort of opening back up, but in a very safe, calculated manner, we still want to provide this information to you so that When we do open fully back up, you can go on there and purchase a kit. And if you've purchased this kit or water containers and you haven't been able to pick them up yet, we actually just had a meeting where we were discussing how we were going to be able to get those items to you to rectify this situation. So
Yeah.
also too, this kit right here, it looks really stuffed and big, but it is not. There is a ton of room left over in it. People have turned this into their go bag. And I will tell you, when they started showing up at the fire station, every firefighter wanted one. And they were like, what is that? How do I get one? And I said, well, you can get one by going onto our website and paying $95. And like, well, what about my discount? I was like, no, you don't get one of those. But they love this bright orange color. They love, and then when they saw what was in it, they were like, wow. So I actually have had several firefighters that went and purchased them for their family as well. They thought the items in there not only were ideal for the situations that you would come across and not overwhelming for people in households, but the quality of the items too were great too. So they weren't just like, oh, a really cheap a pair of tweezers. It was actually like a really nice pair of tweezers, which we can owe that to Chip for being very nitpicky about that.
Well, and Dr. Vicky Coe, who did the first design on this, and you know, I just worked with her reviewing a couple of versions of this until we had professional grade tools and materials in this. You know, if you showed up to some sort of a scene and handed this to an EMT, they'd know exactly what to do with it and they'd be happy with the quality. So anyhow, these are available. They're going to be available again very soon. We've just started talking about how realistically we can implement pickups. And I think we just about got that sorted out. For a long time, we were not able to order more. They just didn't have some of the contents because due to the pandemic situation, a lot of medical supplies had been cleaned out. So we were just unable to get these for the last couple of months, but they say we can get more, and we have a small inventory. So we're thinking about putting them online again very soon. We'll send around an email. If you signed up for this course online, actually, filled out that registration form, you're on the list. You'll get a note as soon as they're available again.
And the last thing I just want to mention on this is we do have training that is specific for this bag. We have presented it multiple times before, and it not only goes over what to do with the items inside, but how to organize the items inside, because Dr. Vicky Coe has done a phenomenal job organizing the contents in this bag with Ziploc bags and a label maker. You could use a permanent marker.
I have a burn. I have a cut.
Yeah. So it's labeled by injury, abrasions, right? Orthopedic. And you just go in and you pull out the Ziploc bag, so then you're not also contaminating all the other items. So she explains how and why she organizes the kit the way she does. And then we show you how to use the items within it so that anybody in your household, whether or not you've taken a first aid training, you feel comfortable using the items and comfortable enough to be able to help someone if there is an emergency.
Yes, yes. And you know, the same logic, Vicky Coe, Dr. Vicky Coe is working with us as well to apply that same kind of logic to the CERT responder teams that we're building right now. And, you know, putting together large kits for, you know, 50-person incidents. You know, I've got 10 people burned here, boom, and they're on the road. So there's a lot of thought going into these things for our community's benefit. May we never need it.
Okay. All right. I cannot stress enough how important it is to know your neighbors. I talk about it all the time, but I grew up when I was really little. I'm sure you guys did too. Everybody played with each other. There were no fences. Everybody knew each other. And now, if we walk outside and we make eye contact with somebody across the street, it's like blinders up. We're terrified. Oh no, who was that? They looked at me, right? And we're also in that age where we just, our eyes are always down, focused on our phones. We don't realize the benefit of knowing your neighbors. And this isn't just for disaster preparedness, this is just for awareness in general. This piggybacks and dovetails on the, now I lost the name of it, the neighborhood watch programs that are out there. Knowing your neighbors is important. Being aware of your surroundings, having casual conversations with your neighbors, building that sense of community with everybody around you is what's going to make you resilient after a disaster, whatever it is. Because you can have all the supplies and goods possible in your house, and then a big earthquake hits and you somehow get pinned in your household and you can't get access to that food, and you haven't talked to any of your neighbors, so they don't even know you really exist. They just know you as that kind of hermit living in your house. Well, they're not going to come check on you because you haven't established a relationship. So establishing those connections and those relationships is what's going to make you as a community resilient to any type of disaster that might happen, any type of instance. Even if it's a resident on a block, just one resident who loses a family member or something very important, having that sense of community around you is really what's going to be beneficial and give that sense of well-being and healing to everybody or to that person. Okay, next. Oh, unless
you touched upon a good point, which is that we're really teaching now, not even so much how to be prepared for an earthquake as how to be prepared for a shortage of food, shortage of power, how to be prepared for the various little individual things that you might have to cope with. And yes, it adds up to an earthquake. Part of it also adds up to wildfire. Part of it adds up to et cetera, et cetera. But it really is just, it's not this big pile of things to think about. It's really just a bunch of simple little things and kind of getting into that mindset that gets you prepared.
So on this next one, it's like, how do I engage my neighbors? I want to do more than just talk to my one neighbor. I want to engage my whole block. Okay, right now during the pandemic, we're not going to be having barbecues, hanging out with each other. We still want to practice very smart social distancing. Obviously, but before the pandemic happened, we had some great people that tried really hard to engage their neighbors, because we had people that were like, oh, nobody wants to come over and talk about emergency preparedness. And we realized that you can't approach it with that. You cannot go to your neighbors and be like, we need to get prepared for an earthquake, because they're not going to want to sit down and have a meeting about that. They're just not going to want to. You need to go and say, hey, I'm having a barbecue and we're doing a potluck or whatever it is. And then you gather them there, and then you slip emergency preparedness or some other message in there along with it. Because then you're already talking, you're together, and then you guys are like, oh yeah, we should be concerned about this. Even if it's something simple as, does everybody have working smoke alarms? Do you know how to test your smoke alarm? I had one woman, she actually she lived on a street that had a bunch of widows on it. And she's like, these women, she's like, it took me a very long time even for them to get comfortable with me, to go up to their house and speak to them, but they were all widows. And she knew that they were a little bit of a high risk because they were aging. And so she actually came up with this brilliant idea to have soup Wednesdays. And so she brought them all together on Wednesdays, and they had soup, and they talked about all these important things about, well, what would you do? Do you have a family member that could come help you? Have you talked about this? Have you thought about this? And so I thought that was a really, really smart way, really outside of the box way of thinking about bringing you and your neighbors together. And right now too, all this preparation that we're doing, it not only goes earthquakes, wildfire, pandemic, we need to think about the public safety power shutoffs too, because that falls into all of this. And a lot of it is still the same thing. You are not going to be able to communicate the same ways as before. Your food's going to go bad because your power is going to be shut off, right? So you're going to need to be able to have a plan in place for all of those things. You're going to need to know what neighbors to check on. If you need somebody to come check on you, if you have equipment that needs power in order for you to say survive, if you sleep with a CPAP machine, all of those things that you need to plan for during a major disaster is the same thing with a PSPS.
Well, we learned last year that there are some areas that have water pumping stations into the area that such that if they lose power.
Oh, well, that's Cal Water. Cal Water, they were the first ones immediately when PG&E started saying they were going to start doing the PSPSs. Cal Water was like, all right, we're going to put some generators where our pumps are so that the water is not going to stop.
Did they get 100% coverage on that in our district?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's what they were the first ones to address all those. They have the generators in places. I'm sure they're not staged at everything, but they have them in the important areas where they can dispatch them. They said that the water system is backed up if there is a PSPS, and that was before we even had a PSPS event. So good for Cal Water there.
Yeah, good for Cal Water. I know a lot of the cell phone providers are still. There are a lot of areas that will still lose cell phone coverage after several hours because their backup is batteries, and they don't have any generator plans.
And I think also too, it's important to know that we didn't always consider them to be an essential service. So by them not being recognized as an essential service, they didn't have to meet a lot of the requirements that we would have thought, having this backup power for a certain amount of time. So we're all trying to play catch up or forcing them to play catch up. So when I have residents that come to me and go, well, what about the cell phone towers? Or I have no reception or all of this, we're like, yeah, we get it. We understand. And we've been pushing the cell phone providers to work towards something better, but it's going to take some time.
Well, there are some areas that we found out last year that when they lose power, there were several homes that have landlines, and everyone has always believed that if you have a landline, you've got a piece of copper between you and the phone company, and you'll never be without a dial tone on that line. And we found out last year that there are several places up the hill where that's not true. If they lose power, they lose their landline. So, you know, yeah, I believe the state has now mandated that the communication services are essential, but I don't think that that they're done implementing all the backups that they need to keep everything running. There is what's called FirstNet out there now, which is a first responder cellular network that is reserved for first responders. You have to be a first responder, you have to be a firefighter or with a police organization or some other official first responder organization, but then you can be on that network, and it will not be overloaded, it will not go down. It's a much more hardened network in communications. So our first responders may be able to hand you a cell phone when everything else is not working. The firefighter might have a cell phone that's working. Next.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, what can you do today? Well, hey, get prepared. To get prepared. Again, the number one thing, if you haven't done it already, right as soon as you get done with this meeting, go and get hooked up on SMC Alert. Next thing to do is spread the word to anybody who will listen in your neighborhood about this resource that you found, this class. Try to get everybody you know to come and do this and be aware that these resources exist. And don't try to do it all at once. You never can. I've been working on this for several years now, and I kind of caught fire. I'm kind of crazy on this topic, and I can only do so much in a day. And if I get my water jugs filled tomorrow, that'll be great. If I do one other little thing this week, that'll be great. Then I've done 100 things this year. You know, if you can get that much done, you're probably ahead of me. So just try to, you know, look around your house, get those sneakers and a flashlight in a bag under your bed. Make sure there's nothing hanging over your bed waiting to crush you in an earthquake. It's just little things like that that'll save you from big pain. And I sure appreciate you guys attending this class today. Please, this is your resource. Yell at me, yell at Selena, yell at anybody associated with this program. Anytime you spot something you think we can be doing better, we'll try. And thank you. So we have, you know, another thing that you can do, and this is kind of a big step, if you're all charged up and you really want to get involved and you want to learn some more advanced skills, you want to get some hands-on practice, doing things like working with a fire extinguisher, you want to actually do some of those things so that you feel like you're ready and you know how to go into action and respond. Join that team, work as a disaster service worker. About 20 hours of classwork will get you there, and you can be part of the CERT organization. That's a Community Emergency Response Team. It's a curriculum that was put together by FEMA, started in LA by the LA Fire Department after some big problems they had years back down there. And FEMA looked at what they were doing and said, boy, that makes so much sense. We're going to push that out nationwide. And they standardized that course, and it is a big nationwide effort now. And there are thousands and thousands of.
It's worldwide, actually.
Yeah, it is. It is
Yeah,
worldwide.
it's worldwide.
And it's available in Spanish in California. And we don't actually have any Spanish instructors here, but I'm sure that there are listos programs, which is what it's called in the Spanish side.
Mm-hmm.
Listos is ready. We're ready. Estamos listos. But here it's WPV CERT. That's our neighborhood. That's the CERT program that covers us here. And it's making giant strides to be more effective right now. We're trying to get boots on the ground and have a real response capability, which we haven't in the past. And we would have by now if we didn't all go into lockdown a few months back. We were that close. We're actually building the command posts and whatnot, putting together the trailers and stocking it, and that's being done as I speak. So please go to the WPVCert.org site, or again, you're on the email list now. You'll get an email as soon as we figure out how to do one of those CERT programs online, because they require some more hands-on. So it needs to be split up a little differently.
But
we're working on that.
lastly, too, we just want to let you know that now that we're using Zoom for everything, we have our monthly operations logistics meetings that you can get more involved in without having to drive somewhere and show up. They're all on, we do them via Zoom. They're the same date monthly. We have them on the second Wednesday of every month at 4 o'clock. And then we have 2 towns that have emergency preparedness committees that you can be a part of. CHIP is a part of one of them, Woodside and Portola Valley. All of these programs are kind of intertwined with each other, but these programs cannot function without you putting in work individually and as a community. My role especially is as a coordinator. I'm a facilitator. I cannot do all of the work. I can just help you guys all do the work and help all of us to reach the goals that we want.
Yeah, and we really need volunteers. I mean, if you feel like you'd like to do some writing for a good cause, you'd like to maybe take pictures for a good cause, or do something creative for a good cause, I just encourage you to watch your email and attend some of the meetings that we have, and you can see quickly how many more good ideas we have than we have people to help get it written up and published. So we need all the help we can get, please. Don't hesitate. You can't screw it up any worse than I screwed up the video today.
Don't say that. I mean, look at this CERT logo. If you have ever seen a CERT logo before, they do not look like this. He has particularly created this, thank you, Chip, by making it very, should we say, catered to our area.
We've got an oak tree and sequoias and a horse. I thought if I could get that much to look good.
Instead of high-rise buildings, which we do.
Yeah, instead of the high-rise buildings.
All right, let's go to the next slide. So with that, everyone, I just want to say thank you so much for bearing with us. We both learned a lot on this, and thanks to Chip so much for always being there with me to help me teach these courses. It would be way too much for me to talk for almost 3 hours, and I know Chip as well. So we have a lot of fun doing these. If you guys have any additional questions, please submit them in the chat. Otherwise, Chip, if you'd like to say anything else, this is our contact info.
Yeah, seriously, send me a note anytime. this is kind of my job now. And until I retire again, this is what I do.
Mhm.
So love to help you out.
Yeah.
All right.
Thanks,
Any-
you too.
Oh, a pleasure, a sincere pleasure. I wouldn't do this if it hurt.
Good to see you, Dave.
Thanks, Selena. Thank you both.
Absolutely.
Thank you indeed.
All right, folks.